Have you ever trusted someone who turned out to be your worst nightmare? Imagine being a teenager facing not only bullying but betrayal by someone you thought cared. Today's story dives deep into the harsh reality of manipulation, trust shattered, and the fight to reclaim one's voice. If you want powerful, real stories that shine light on tough social issues, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our community. Now, let's get into Maya's story. It started with silence. Not the kind that fills a room when the teacher forgets to ask for homework or the hush before morning announcements. This silence was heavier. It followed her everywhere, down the halls, through the cafeteria, even into the bathroom stall where she'd sometimes hide when the world felt too loud. Her name was Maya. 15. Smart. Quiet. Wore the same green jacket most days and kept her hair in a bun so tight it made her temples ache. She wasn't invisible, but she wasn't meant to be seen. Not like that. Eastbrook High was one of those schools where everything looked like a movie set. Wide hallways, shiny trophy cases, a football field that soaked up most of the budget, and cliques so clearly drawn it was like someone had painted them on the floor. Maya didn't belong to any of them. She had two friends, Tasha, who transferred last semester and always had earbuds in, and Lena, who sat with her during lunch and drew anime girls in her math notebook. They were quiet, like her. Safe. Until Jace Carson said her name out loud. It happened on a Wednesday, 3 weeks into sophomore year. She was walking past the gym when she heard, "Maya, right?" She turned slowly, sure he meant someone else. But no, he was looking right at her. Jace was the kind of boy everyone watched. White, blonde, tall, all shoulders and jawline. Star quarterback. His smile could melt the frost off a January morning. Maya had heard his name 1,000 times, but never like this. Never with her name next to it. "Yeah," she said, her voice cracking just slightly. He grinned. "You're in Mr. Weathers's English, right? Third period." She blinked. "Yeah. I'm horrible at poetry. You mind helping me out sometime?" She stared at him. Was this a joke? But he kept smiling, waiting. There were no friends with him, no cameras, no punchline. "Sure," she mumbled. "Cool," he said, still grinning. "I'll find you." And he did. The next day, he sat next to her in class. Not across the room like before. Right next to her. Asked real questions. Laughed at her dumb jokes. Not too loud, but enough. By Friday, he walked her halfway to her locker. Said, "See you Monday, Maya," like they'd always known each other. Tasha raised her eyebrows when Maya told her. "Jace Carson," she said, pulling out one earbud. "Like that Jace Carson?" Maya nodded, chewing her sleeve. "You sure he's not messing with you?" "I don't think so. Guys like that don't just talk to girls like us." Maya shrugged. But inside, her stomach buzzed like it had swallowed a beehive. She'd never had a boyfriend. Barely even talked to boys. She didn't post thirst traps. Didn't go to parties. Didn't even own lip gloss. But Jace? Jace saw her. Really saw her. At least, that's what she thought. By week 2, he was texting her. Late at night. "Can't sleep. You up? Guess who just watched that movie you told me about? You looked real pretty today. Just saying." And she'd smile in the dark, phone screen lighting her face, trying not to wake her mom. Her mom, Danielle, worked double shifts at the hospital. Kept food on the table and the rent paid. She didn't ask about boys. Didn't have time for teenage drama. So Maya kept it quiet. Held the new part of her life like a secret under her pillow. Sometimes they'd sit under the bleachers after school. Just the two of them. Talking. Laughing. Once he brushed her fingers and didn't let go. Another time he leaned in, real close, his breath warm on her cheek. But he didn't kiss her. Not yet. "You're different," he whispered once. "I like that. Different. Not like the cheerleaders. Not like the girls who posted selfies with filters and duck lips. Different. Special." One afternoon, he showed her his sketchbook. No one else had ever seen it, he said. Inside were black and white drawings of people, mostly athletes in motion, some teachers, a few strangers on buses. But one page made her freeze. It was her. He'd drawn her, the bun, the jacket, even her chipped nail polish. "How did you?" "From memory," he said. "I guess you stuck in my head." She stared at the page like it was magic. Like he'd reached inside her and pulled her out onto paper. After that, everything changed. People started looking. Whispers in the hall. Girls gave her long, sideways stares. Guys nodded at her like she was suddenly part of a club she hadn't asked to join. A few people even followed her on Instagram. She didn't know what to do with any of it. Lena noticed first. "Why are they staring at you like that?" she asked, twirling her pencil. Maya shrugged. "I guess, people are just weird." But inside, she felt it growing, this invisible thing wrapping around her, lifting her out of the shadows. And for the first time in a long time, Maya didn't feel like a ghost. Not yet. The whispers didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder. Maya tried everything to ignore them. She tucked her chin down when walking through the crowded hallways, quickening her pace as if the faster she moved, the less they'd notice her. She didn't look up when she passed groups of students who stopped mid-conversation as she neared. She told herself it was nothing, just high school nonsense. But it wasn't nothing. Sometimes she caught pieces of their conversations, the snippets of laughter that stopped the moment she came close, the quick glances that darted away as if she wasn't supposed to be there. One rainy Thursday afternoon, she hid in the library, her refuge from the noise and eyes. She sat near a window watching drops race down the glass. The library was almost empty and she hoped to spend the last hour before class in silence. But then she saw him. Jace. Leaning casually against a bookshelf, eyes locked on her. His usual confident smile was there, but something in his gaze was different today. There was a sharpness, a flicker of calculation that made her stomach twist. He walked over, holding 2 sodas. Thought you might want one, he said, handing her a cold can. His voice was low, casual, like it was no big deal. Maya's fingers trembled slightly as she accepted the drink. Thanks, she whispered. They sat at the small corner table, the hum of the fluorescent lights filling the quiet space. Books and papers lay forgotten between them. So, Jace started, leaning forward, you think this whole thing is weird? Maya shrugged, avoiding his eyes. I don't know what to think. 1 minute I'm just me. Then suddenly I'm this. The girl everyone's talking about. Jace nodded slowly like he understood more than she did. You're not just this, he said. You're more than what they see. That's why they stare. Because you don't fit their mold. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to believe him. Maybe she was more. Maybe she wasn't invisible after all. Over the next few days, Jace's presence became constant. He was there waiting for her by her locker in the morning. He walked beside her to class, his easy laughter mingling with hers in a way that made the crowded halls feel less suffocating. He even talked to her friends, but always found ways to pull Maya back into his orbit. She noticed the looks from his football teammates, some curious, some mocking. Their smirks were like little needles, but she tried not to care. She wanted to believe Jace was different. One Friday evening, after a grueling football practice, Jace asked if she wanted to hang out. Maya's heart thudded painfully in her chest. His house was enormous. A sprawling 2-story with walls lined by polished trophies, framed photos of Jace in various uniforms and shelves stuffed with awards and plaques. The silence inside was heavy, a stark contrast to the noisy hallways of Eastbrook High. Maya felt out of place, a small dark figure in a world of glittering success. But Jace didn't notice or pretended not to. They sat on the couch, music playing softly from the speakers. He showed her a playlist he'd made, songs with lyrics that seemed to speak to her, songs about hope, pain, finding yourself. Everyone's got a soundtrack, he said, eyes searching hers. You just need to find yours. Hours passed like minutes. They talked about everything, the pressures of school, their dreams, fears, families. Maya laughed more than she had in weeks. As the night deepened, Jace leaned closer. His hand brushed her cheek, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. Maya's breath caught. She was terrified and thrilled all at once. She trusted him. Then, in the quiet of his room, it happened. Not loud, not rushed. Just a slow, trembling crossing of boundaries she wasn't ready for but didn't know how to stop. Afterwards, silence hung between them. Maya's mind spun in a whirlwind of confusion. What was this? Love? Friendship? Something else entirely? Jace looked at her with a calm, steady gaze. Hey, he whispered, voice soft. You okay? She nodded, too stunned to speak. Later that night, her phone buzzed. A message from Jace. Nobody has to know. Just us. But Maya felt anything but safe. Loneliness wrapped around her like a shroud. She was caught in something bigger than herself. And the whispers started again. Only now they were different. The days after that night felt different, heavier, darker, like a weight was pressing down on Maya's chest she couldn't shake off. She woke up each morning hoping it was all a bad dream. But the truth waited for her every time she stepped into Eastbrook High's doors. The school felt less like a place to learn and more like a cage, each corridor a narrow passage of judgment. It wasn't the way she expected things to be. She'd imagined maybe awkward smiles. Maybe some questions. But not this. The whispers started the day after. At first, it was just a few hushed voices behind her back. Then came the stares, long, unblinking, full of something cruel and hungry. She noticed how groups of students would stop mid-conversation as she approached, exchanging glances that made her skin crawl. Maya tried everything to disappear. She walked faster. She kept her eyes on the floor. She avoided places where crowds gathered. One day, the whispers followed her into the cafeteria. She found a quiet table at the corner and sat down, hoping to eat in peace. But peace was a stranger here. Her tray clattered loudly as it landed on the table beside her. "Hey, star-crossed," came a mocking voice. Maya looked up to see Brianna standing there. Brianna, with her perfect hair, perfect smile, and perfect mean streak, was the queen of the popular crowd. "What do you want?" Maya's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. Brianna's eyes glinted with amusement. "Just checking in. Heard you're hanging with Jace. Guess he's got a new favorite." Laughter bubbled up from the girls sitting nearby. They whispered cruel jokes, making sure Maya heard every word. Maya's fists clenched under the table, her nails digging into her palms. She swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She wanted to say something fierce, something that would make them stop. But the words caught in her throat. Instead, she grabbed her tray and left, the cold cafeteria suddenly feeling suffocating. The rumors didn't stop there. They spread faster than wildfire. "They say she's easy. She's just after Jace's fame. Did you see the way she talks to him? So fake." Each insult felt like a blow. Each rumor a fresh wound. At school, Maya became a target. Students who once ignored her now sneered as she passed by. Teachers noticed the change but said nothing, dismissing it as teenage drama. Maya felt like she was drowning in a sea of judgment. Her phone buzzed constantly. Messages from unknown numbers, mean comments on her posts, cruel memes with her face photoshopped into humiliating images. And then came the video. One afternoon, as Maya sat in the library, her phone buzzed again. Her heart pounding, she unlocked it. A message from an unknown number. "Watch this." She hesitated, then pressed play. The video showed her and Jace at his house, the night they had spent together. Not just bits, but the whole thing. Every moment that she had believed was private, captured and shared without her consent. Her vision blurred with tears. She felt naked, exposed to the whole world. She typed a trembling message to Jace. "Why did you do this?" The reply came immediately, cold and detached. "Relax. It's just us. Don't make a big deal." But it wasn't just them anymore. It was everyone. She was trapped. Her sanctuary shattered. She stopped going to school some days, hiding in her room, afraid to face the endless humiliation. At home, her mother noticed the change. One evening, Danielle found Maya sitting on her bed, staring blankly at the wall. "Is everything okay, baby?" she asked gently, sitting beside her. Maya shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared, Mom," she whispered. Danielle wrapped her arms around Maya, holding her tight. "We'll get through this," she promised. Together. But Maya didn't feel the promise. She felt the walls closing in. School had become a battlefield. Every glance was a weapon. Every whisper a sharpened arrow. She wanted to scream, to fight back, but the weight of betrayal was crushing. Jace was still there, sometimes kind, sometimes distant. Always watching. And Maya knew that the hardest part was still ahead. School felt like walking into a storm. Maya couldn't escape it. Every hallway, every classroom echoed with whispers, stares, smirks. Her friends started to pull away, unsure how to stand by her without becoming targets themselves. The safe space she once had crumbled. One day, she sat alone on the bleachers after school. The cool breeze brushed her face, but it didn't reach the cold knot in her chest. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "You better keep quiet if you know what's good for you." Her hands trembled as she showed the message to her mother. Danielle's face tightened with worry. "We have to tell someone," she said firmly. Maya shook her head. "What if it gets worse? What if they don't believe me?" Danielle took a deep breath. "We will find a way," she promised. At school, the torment didn't stop. Brianna and her clique pushed her in the hallways, snatched her books, laughed at her. Teachers watched but did nothing. One day, during history class, a crumpled note landed on Maya's desk. She opened it slowly. "You're a joke. We own you." Her heart raced. She wanted to fight back, to scream at them, to show she was stronger. But fear held her silent. Jace's texts became more demanding. "Don't even think about going to the principal. You'll regret it." Maya felt like a prisoner in her own life. She began skipping school, hiding from the storm she couldn't control. One evening, Danielle sat her down. "Maya, you're not alone. We'll get through this, but you have to be brave. You have to fight." Maya looked up, tears in her eyes. "How?" "When everything feels broken." Danielle took her hand. "By holding on to who you are. By telling the truth. And by refusing to be silenced." That night, Maya made a decision. She would no longer be the quiet girl in the corner. She would stand. No matter the cost. The next morning, Maya woke up feeling a flicker of something she hadn't felt in weeks, hope. She clung to it like a lifeline as she got ready for school. Danielle's words echoed in her mind by refusing to be silenced. She wasn't sure how she'd do it, how she could face the laughter, the whispers, the betrayal. But she knew she had to try. At school, the atmosphere was heavy as usual. The halls buzzed with gossip, the stares more cutting than ever. Maya walked slowly, her shoulders squared despite the tremble in her hands. She caught sight of Brianna across the hall. The queen bee's smirk faltered when their eyes met. "Don't think this is over," Brianna hissed under her breath. Maya ignored her and kept walking. Later, in the library, she opened her laptop and began typing. A letter. Not for anyone specific yet. Just words, truths that had been locked inside her for too long. She wrote about the betrayal, the fear, the pain. She wrote about Jace's betrayal and the video. About the way the school had turned against her. About the loneliness and the strength she was trying to find. After school, Maya showed the letter to Danielle. Her mother read it slowly, tears shining in her eyes. "It's powerful," Danielle said softly. "We can take this to the principal." Maya hesitated. "But what if they don't believe me? Or worse, what if it makes things worse?" Danielle reached out and squeezed her hand. "We won't know unless we try." The next day, Maya and Danielle walked into the principal's office. The principal listened carefully as Maya read her letter aloud, her voice steady but raw. When she finished, the room was silent. The principal nodded slowly. "We take these accusations seriously," she said. "We will investigate immediately." For the first time in weeks, Maya felt a small spark of relief. But the fight was far from over. After school, Maya's phone buzzed with messages from Jace. "You're making a mistake. Think about what you're risking." Maya didn't reply. Instead, she texted a friend asking for help. That night, lying in bed, Maya felt a strange mix of fear and courage. She was stepping into the unknown. But she was no longer alone. The days following the meeting with the principal felt unreal to Maya, like she was living in someone else's story. The weight on her shoulders hadn't lifted, but at least now there was a sliver of hope, a chance to be heard. Yet, stepping back into Eastbrook High was like walking into an invisible storm. The halls were no longer just crowded, they felt suffocating. Eyes followed her everywhere, but not with kindness. There was no pity or sympathy, only coldness and avoidance. Friends she thought she had suddenly crossed the hallway when they saw her coming, as if proximity itself might stain them. Conversations stopped abruptly. She could feel the sharp sting of exclusion in every glance. Maya learned to move like a shadow, quick, quiet, unnoticed. But no matter how fast or far she moved, the whispers followed her. Words like liar, traitor, and worse bounced in the air, heavy and relentless. One gray afternoon, after a particularly cruel day, Maya found herself outside near the cracked concrete bench by the school's back gate. She slumped down, trying to disappear into herself. The autumn wind bit at her cheeks, but it was nothing compared to the cold inside. "Hey!" The voice startled her. She looked up and saw Marcus, Jace's younger brother. Not someone she'd ever really noticed before. He wasn't part of the popular crowd, always keeping to himself in the background. "People can be cruel," Marcus said softly, sitting down beside her without waiting for an invitation. "But they don't know what you're made of." Maya blinked, surprised by his kindness. "Thanks," she whispered, her voice barely audible. He shrugged, eyes fixed on the gray sky. "Jace, he's not who you think he is." "I'm sorry." His words echoed inside her, a strange mix of relief and pain. Relief that not everyone was against her, pain because it confirmed the betrayal. For a moment, Maya allowed herself to breathe. To feel connected, even if only for a little while. But that fragile moment was shattered the next night. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, lighting up the dark room. The screen flashed with Jace's name. "Stop. This is your last warning." Maya's hands trembled violently as she stared at the message. Fear bubbled up, sharp and cold. She showed the text to Danielle, whose face hardened immediately. "No more hiding, Maya," her mother said firmly. "We're going to fight this, but you have to be brave." Together, they started a careful, painstaking process. They screenshot every message, saved every voicemail, and wrote down every incident. They found a school counselor, Ms. Parker, a woman who listened without judgment and promised to help Maya navigate the storm. At school, Maya kept her head down, learning how to steel herself against the invisible knives disguised as stares and whispers. But at night, the fear and anxiety crept in, gnawing at her from the inside. One evening, after a day filled with cold shoulders and snide remarks, Maya finally broke. She sat on the edge of her bed, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I'm so tired, Mom," she said, her voice cracking. Danielle came and wrapped her arms around her, holding her tightly as if to protect her from the darkness. "I know, baby," Danielle whispered, "but you're fighting for your future. This isn't the end of your story." Maya wiped her tears and looked up, trying to find strength in her mother's eyes. "I just want it to stop," she confessed. Danielle kissed her forehead gently. It will. One day at a time. Maya nodded, trying to believe her own words even as doubt gnawed at her heart. The road ahead was long and uncertain, filled with fear and pain. But for the first time in weeks, Maya felt a tiny spark inside, a quiet but fierce determination not to let this break her. She wasn't alone anymore. The school hallways didn't just feel cold anymore, they felt like a battlefield. Every step Maya took was heavy, weighed down by the burden of knowing what everyone thought about her. The rumors had spread like wildfire, fueled by Jace and his friends. Some kids stared openly. Others whispered behind their hands. And worst of all, her so-called friends, the ones who once laughed with her, now treated her like she was invisible, or worse. Maya's heart ached with every glance she caught, every cruel smirk she saw aimed her way. But she refused to let them see her break. In class, she buried herself in work, using schoolwork as a shield against the storm raging outside. Miss Parker, the counselor, became a small island of safety. During their sessions, Maya poured out her fear and pain, each word a heavy stone lifted from her chest. "You're stronger than you realize," Miss Parker said one afternoon. "The courage it takes to speak out, that's real strength." Maya nodded, though doubt still lingered in her mind. After school, Danielle had started attending parent meetings, pushing the administration to act faster. The school was investigating, but progress was slow. One afternoon, as Maya sat in the cafeteria alone, the door swung open and Jay stepped in. The room seemed to freeze. His eyes locked on Maya, cold and calculating. He walked over, ignoring the murmurs from other students. "I told you to stop," he said quietly but with venom. Maya's heart pounded, but she stood her ground. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. Jay smirked. "You will be," he whispered, then turned and left. The cafeteria exploded in whispers and snickers. Maya sat frozen for a moment, feeling the weight of every eye on her. That night, her phone buzzed again. A new video message. Her hands shook as she opened it. It was the worst thing she'd seen. The video showed her and Jace from that night, the private moments captured without her consent. Jace's voice echoed over the footage. "Let's see how much you love your secret now." Panic and shame crashed over Maya like a tidal wave. She hid her face in her hands, trying to block out the world. Danielle found her like that. "We're going to get through this," her mother said fiercely. "I promise." But Maya felt broken. She wondered how many people had already seen the video. She wondered if she could ever face the world again. The next morning, Maya made a choice. She wouldn't hide. She would fight for herself, for her dignity. No matter how hard, no matter how painful. The morning light crept through the thin curtains of Maya's bedroom, but it did little to soften the heaviness in her chest. She sat on the edge of her bed, eyes fixed on the phone in her hands. The screen glowed with dozens of notifications, messages, comments, shares. The video was everywhere. Her stomach churned as she scrolled through the hateful texts. Some were blunt and cruel, others whispered rumors and gossip disguised as concern. Every notification felt like a new cut, reopening wounds that hadn't yet healed. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her breathing. This was her life now. The moment she thought she could breathe, everything spiraled again. That night, she had barely slept. Her thoughts tangled in a mess of fear, shame, and anger. But beneath it all, a tiny spark of defiance had begun to burn. Instead of retreating further into herself, Maya opened her laptop. The screen was blank, a mirror for her swirling emotions. She hesitated, then started typing. "Dear whoever reads this, I am Maya. I'm not just a name on a screen or a face in a hallway. I'm a person, someone who has felt pain and betrayal, someone who is scared but still standing." She paused, fingers trembling over the keyboard. She wrote about the night Jace had crossed the line, about the moment she realized she wasn't just hurt, she was being used and humiliated. She wrote about the video, about the way it had spread like wildfire, turning her world upside down. She wrote about the loneliness, the whispers, the cold stares. But she also wrote about the strength she was finding, the courage to speak up, to fight back. When she finished, she read the words over and over. Then she showed the letter to Danielle. Her mother's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "This is your truth. This is your power." Together, they posted Maya's story on a blog for survivors of bullying and harassment. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support poured in, from strangers, former victims, even a few classmates who had been too afraid to speak out before. At school, something shifted. Not everyone was kind, the whispers and stares didn't disappear overnight. But small acts of kindness began to surface. A girl who usually ignored Maya saved her a seat in the cafeteria. A boy who had never spoken to her gave a quiet thumbs up in the hallway. These moments, fragile and rare, were lifelines. Yet Jace's threats did not stop. His messages grew darker, more desperate. I own you. You'll regret this. Maya's heart raced every time her phone buzzed, but she refused to respond. Instead, she documented everything. Texts, voicemails, social media posts, every piece of evidence she could gather. Danielle helped her report it all to the school and, eventually, to the police. The investigation moved slowly but steadily. Maya found unexpected allies in Ms. Parker, the counselor, and a few teachers who quietly supported her. But the emotional toll was immense. Some nights she lay awake, haunted by nightmares. Other days she felt like giving up. But she clung to the small moments of hope, a smile, a kind word, the knowledge that she was no longer alone. One afternoon, after a meeting with the principal, Maya sat on the bench outside the school with Marcus. You're not invisible, he said softly. You're stronger than they'll ever understand. Maya looked at him, feeling a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope. She was scarred, shaken, but not broken. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she believed she might survive it. The halls of Westbrook High buzzed with the usual chaos, but for Maya, every step felt heavier than the last. The weight of the past weeks hung over her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Each glance felt loaded, every whisper a sharp sting that she couldn't ignore. But Maya was learning to live with it. Not in peace, no, but with a growing resolve to reclaim her life piece by piece. That morning, she ducked into the library before class. The quiet was a balm to her frayed nerves. She found a corner by the window and settled down with her books. She tried to focus on calculus, but her mind kept drifting. Then a soft voice broke through her thoughts. Hey, Maya. She looked up to see Kayla, a girl from her history class. Maya barely knew her, never talked much, but Kayla's eyes held something genuine. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, Kayla said quietly. For everything. You don't deserve what they're doing to you. Maya blinked, surprised. No one had said that in weeks. Not since it all exploded. Thanks, Maya said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Kayla smiled nervously and sat down across from her. I don't get why people are so cruel. But you're not alone. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. For the first time in a long time, Maya felt a small flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The bell rang, pulling them back to reality. Kayla gave a quick nod and left. Maya watched her go, the loneliness inside her easing just a little. After school, Maya met Danielle at the kitchen table. Her mother had been a fortress of strength throughout, never letting her daughter fall apart. Mom, Maya began, I've been thinking maybe I should tell my story. Publicly. Like, on a bigger platform. Danielle looked at her with a mixture of pride and worry. Are you sure? It's brave, but it might be hard. I want people to understand. To know what it feels like. Maybe it'll help someone else. Danielle reached out and took Maya's hands in hers. Then let's do it together. They started writing a detailed account of Maya's experience, not just the worst parts, but her feelings, the pain, and the moments of strength she found. Once it was ready, they sent it to a local news outlet that had shown interest earlier. When the interview was scheduled, Maya's nerves skyrocketed. On the day, she sat before the camera, heart pounding. Her hands trembled slightly as she answered questions about what happened, how it affected her, and what she hoped would change. At first, her voice wavered, but as she spoke, a strange calm settled over her. She wasn't just telling a story, she was reclaiming her truth. When the piece aired on the local news, the response was immediate. Messages flooded in, some hateful, yes, but many more filled with support and solidarity. A few of Maya's classmates sent private messages, apologizing or offering friendship. One day at school, Marcus, a boy from her art class who had kept his distance before, approached her. I saw the story, he said quietly. You're really brave. Don't let those jerks get to you. Maya smiled faintly. Thanks. It's not easy, but I'm trying. The school's investigation into Jace and his friends moved forward. The principal called Maya and her mother in to discuss the findings and the consequences. Jace was suspended and his friends faced serious disciplinary actions. It wasn't justice in the way Maya had imagined, no criminal charges yet, but it was a start. Still, some days were harder than others. The whispers in the hallways didn't fully stop. There were moments when Maya wanted to retreat, to give in to the overwhelming shame and fear. But every time she reminded herself of the small victories, the supportive messages, the friends she was making, the moments she reclaimed her voice. One afternoon after school, Maya sat in the park, sketchbook open on her lap. She was drawing a portrait of a girl surrounded by shadows, the shadows representing fear and pain, but with light breaking through. Marcus found her there and sat down beside her. That's powerful, he said, looking at the drawing. Thanks, Maya said. Sometimes art helps me say what I can't put into words. He nodded. You don't have to face this alone. For the first time in weeks, Maya believed it. She wasn't invisible. She wasn't broken. She was fighting. And she was winning one small step at a time. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains of Maya's room, but it did little to ease the restless feeling churning inside her. Today felt different, though she wasn't quite sure why. Maybe it was the fact that the storm she'd been fighting for so long was finally starting to calm, or maybe it was the weight of everything that had happened settling like a quiet echo in her bones. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, phone buzzing with notifications. She hesitated before unlocking the screen, afraid of what she might find. But instead of the usual flood of cruel messages and threats, she saw something new, messages filled with support, kindness, even apologies. Her heart skipped a beat. For the first time in what felt like forever, she let herself breathe. She got ready for school slowly, her movements deliberate. The thought of walking those hallways still made her stomach twist, but she knew she couldn't hide anymore. Not now. Stepping onto the campus felt like entering a different world, one where she was no longer invisible or just a target. Some students looked at her with respect, others avoided eye contact but without the usual malice. She caught the briefest nod from a girl who had never spoken to her before. It was small, but it meant something. Maya's first class was history, and as she packed her things, Mr. Jennings, the teacher, stopped beside her. "Maya," he said softly, "I just want you to know I'm proud of you. What you've done, it takes courage that most people don't have." His words warmed something inside her, a fragile thread of strength weaving itself back through the cracks. "Thank you, sir," she replied, managing a small smile. The school day rolled on, and with each passing hour, Maya felt a bit more grounded. It wasn't perfect, there were still whispers, sidelong glances, but they didn't pierce her like before. She was changing how she saw herself, and that made all the difference. After school, Maya headed to the counseling office. Ms. Parker greeted her with a smile and invited her to join a support group forming for students who had experienced bullying and harassment. Maya was hesitant at first but decided to give it a try. The room was small and quiet, filled with a handful of other students. When it was her turn to speak, her voice was tentative but grew stronger with every word. "I'm Maya," she said. "I've been through a lot these past weeks. People made me feel worthless. But I'm still here, and I want to believe there's a way forward." Others nodded, sharing their own stories, their own battles. The room became a refuge, a place where pain was acknowledged and strength was nurtured. When she left the meeting, Maya felt lighter, less alone. Back home, Danielle was waiting with a warm smile and a stack of mail. "There's a letter from the city council," she said, handing it to Maya. "They want you to speak at the upcoming community meeting about bullying and school safety." Maya's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "This is huge," she whispered. "It is," Danielle agreed. "But you're ready." The next weeks were a whirlwind. Maya worked with Danielle and Ms. Parker to prepare her speech. She poured her heart into it, wanting to tell the truth, not just her pain, but her hope. On the day of the community meeting, the room was packed with parents, teachers, city officials, and students. Maya's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped up to the microphone. She took a deep breath and began. "I want to share my story, not because I want sympathy, but because I want change. Because no one should feel like I did. No one should be silenced by fear or shame." Her voice wavered at first, but she found her rhythm. She spoke about the betrayal, the pain of the video, and the bullying, but also about the small moments of kindness, the friends she'd found, and the strength that grew inside her. When she finished, the room was silent for a moment before applause erupted. Tears streamed down her face, but she stood tall. After the meeting, several people approached her, parents thanking her for speaking out, officials promising action, students offering their support. It wasn't the end of her struggle, she knew that. But it was a beginning. The school's disciplinary actions against Jace and his friends were finalized soon after. Suspensions, mandatory counseling, and community service. It wasn't justice in the fullest sense, but it was a sign that her voice mattered. At school, the environment slowly shifted. The whispers became fewer. Some students who had once joined in the torment began to avoid Jace's group or even offer quiet apologies to Maya. One afternoon, Maya found herself sitting with Marcus under the old oak tree in the schoolyard. He had become one of her closest friends, someone who didn't judge or pity her. "You've come a long way," Marcus said, handing her a sketchbook. "Keep creating. It's your voice too." Maya smiled, flipping through the pages filled with her drawings, portraits of strength, scenes of hope breaking through darkness. "Thanks, Marcus," she said softly. "I don't know where I'd be without you." He shrugged, grinning. "We've got each other's backs." That night, as Maya lay in bed, she thought about everything, the pain, the fight, the unexpected kindness. She knew scars would always be there, reminders of what she endured, but she also knew she was more than her scars. She was a survivor. a fighter, a young woman carving out her own future. And with that thought, a quiet peace settled over her.